Taiwan is located at the junction of the Philippine Sea Plate and the Eurasian Plate. The active plate tectonics resulted in the diversity of Taiwan's geological terrain. However, there have some features may lead to disasters, such as high elevation, steep slope, and weak geological. Destructive disasters are easily happen by heavy rain and strong wind. The record-high torrential rains brought by Typhoon Herb in 1996 led to the breakout of large-scale debris flow disasters along Chengyoulan River in Nantou County. Debris flow has since become synonymous of slopeland disaster. In 2009, Typhoon Morakot brought 3,000 millimeters precipitation to the mountains of central and southern Taiwan within 72 hours. The extremely torrential rain resulted in a catastrophic disaster, especially in Xiaolin Village, Kaohsiung City. This kind of large-scale sediment and flood compound disasters must be the greatest challenge in the future. In 1999, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau was attached to the Council of Agriculture Executive Yuan. The Bureau is in charge of slopeland utilization and management, debris flow disaster prevention and response, 921 earthquake reconstruction, slopeland conservation, slopeland investigation and planning, rural village planning and development, engineering quality control, education and promotion, etc. The Debris Flow Disaster Prevention Center was formed in 2008. The government adopted the Rural Regeneration Act in 2010 and appointed the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau in charge of promotion. The Research and Technology Development Team was formed in 2016. The Soil and Water Conservation Bureau is the competent authority for soil and water conservation in Taiwan. The Bureau's main tasks include slopeland management, torrent control, and debris flow disaster prevention and response, as well as rural villages planning and sustainable management, are important objects for the new era. Taiwan's total land area is 36,000 square kilometers, and slopeland reaches 26,000 square kilometers. Soil and water conservation work face more and more challenging because of landslides, complex landslides, debris flow, and other natural disasters caused by the extreme weather of recent years, as well as improper development and use. To relieve the public from the threats of slopeland disasters, the Bureau constantly promotes total watershed management and disaster prevention works based on 3 strategies: management, governance, and disaster prevention. The Bureau builds a slopeland disaster prevention system for community safety to strengthen soil and water conservation, advocating disaster prevention education, and implementing slopeland monitoring management to maintain a healthy and safety slopeland environment. With regard to debris flow disaster prevention and monitoring, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau constantly applies advanced technology in the interpretation and monitoring of landslides, investigation of potential debris flow torrent, and investigation of major sediment disaster cases. In addition to further understanding the slopeland landslide overview and susceptible to disasters areas, it's more important to design and review the scope of possibly affected areas, as well as protected objects one by one as a reference for local governments in times of evacuation. Soil and Water Conservation Bureau has gradually promoted self-dependent resistant communities since 2004. According to different characteristics of community, the Bureau establishes awareness through simulation, disaster prevention drills, publicity, and training for debris flow disaster prevention specialists. The Self-Dependent Resistant Community 2.0, launched in 2018, will focus on villages, introduce professional collaborative teams, and strengthen partnership with local governments for the self-dependent resistant work to reach the level of national participation. Apply navigation and telemetry technology facilitates measurement of landslide and torrent terrain to analyze landslide area change and estimate sediment transport in watershed, in order to understand the watershed environment, and provides overview of sediment change. Moreover, the Bureau takes disaster prevention action for landslides, complex landslides, and debris flow in watershed areas with severe sediment disasters to mitigate loss of soil and water and safeguard people's lives and property. Additionally, the Bureau launches conservation management measures for land exposed by landslides and torrents with high sediment production in important reservoir watersheds to extend the life of reservoirs. The Bureau also investigates and collects watershed ecological data from environmentally sensitive areas or key ecological areas requiring special attention to grasp an overview of watershed environment and ecology. The Bureau emphasizes ecology conservation from the project planning and design stage, adopting the principles of recusal, avoidance, reduction, mitigation, and compensation to minimize ecological disturbance and impact caused by management engineering. The Bureau has been thinking about outside of the standard education box to develop interesting, fun, and innovative popular science resources. The Bureau voluntarily offers soil and water conservation series-related curricular activities and teaching resources on campuses, and work with social enterprises and other public sector resources to create 4 new powers in flipped education of soil and water conservation. The Bureau continues to cooperate and establish soil and water conservation outdoor classrooms and instructional campuses with the private sector, universities and colleges, research institutes, and county and city governments. This enhances the public understand and aware the importance of soil and water resource conservation. In 2015, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau and National Zhongxing University formed the world's first Landau Creek field-scale sediment transport experimental station, establishing an experiment place for debris flow occurrence and landslide dam breaching. The mobile publicity truck for soil and water conservation goes deep into rural villages and gives children the correct knowledge of debris flow disaster prevention through AR instruction, painting books, games, and competitions, so that all children can join the Young Debris Flow Disaster Prevention Team. With regard to response work of debris flow disaster prevention, the Bureau integrates stationary, mobile and simple debris flow observation stations, debris flow disaster information network, disaster prevention response system, and integrated disaster prevention information app to establish the debris flow smart disaster prevention decision-making network and provide the information needed to support decision-making. Meanwhile, the Disaster Prevention Public Warning System, PWS, instantly transmits disaster prevention warnings to people's mobile phones so that the public will receive notifications regarding evacuation and disaster avoidance in time. The Soil and Water Conservation Bureau will apply satellite imagery interpretation technology after torrential rains from typhoons to grasp the state of debris flow and slopeland variation in Taiwan, in addition to conducting evaluations of areas susceptible to disasters and secondary disasters. The Bureau also offers related data of references for the post-disaster recovery and reconstruction to relevant agencies. With the rapid development of industrialization, rural communities are faced with aging populations, declining industries, and insufficient public facilities. Hence, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau promotes the Rural Regeneration Act. The first step in rural regeneration is to change people's mindset. The Bureau organizes manpower cultivation programs in rural communities all over Taiwan to familiarize community residents with local resources, discuss community vision, establish consensus, and establish a direction and future blueprints for rural development. The Bureau also encourages young people to go to and get to know rural communities, so that they'll have the opportunity to stay and promote the alternation of rural generations and cultural heritage. apart from continually promoting regional resource integration in rural communities nationwide. This creates an excellent environment and effectively invigorates rural industry and economic growth. Independent and stable economy is the foundation of rural development. The Bureau selects community enterprises with great potential to be the leaders of rural industries, driving the autonomous, sustainable development of local rural communities. Meanwhile, the Rural Industry Cross-Field Program is launched by rural communities' existing industries. The program emphasizes the core industry development required to establish a cross-field cooperation execution mechanism between Taiwan's rural communities and the public and private sectors, thereby forming a complete industry value chain. Due to the increasingly intense climate change in recent years, the Bureau must adopt innovative ideas and approaches to face the challenges. The Bureau launched Phase 1 of the 4-year large-scale landslide prevention and mitigation plan for climate change in an attempt to build a smart disaster prevention of slopeland environment. The Bureau not only continually increase own strength, but also conducts with international cooperation, including Japan, Italy, Germany, and China for slopeland disaster prevention and rural villages regeneration. In cooperation with the government's new southbound policy regarding trade cooperation, talent exchange, resource sharing, and regional chain, the Bureau launches technical cooperation and exchange with countries in Northeast and Southeast Asia to share the outcomes of rural villages regeneration. Over the years, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau has been devoted to its work, tasked with disaster prevention and rescue, and implementing policy with a philosophy of quality, efficiency, and teamwork. The Bureau's long-term efforts and dedication are supported and recognized throughout industry, academia, and government. This support will continue to inspire the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau to face new challenges in the future.